A 30-day negotiating window with the U.S. and a military bill of $4 billion is what Prime Minister Mark Carney was able to walk away with after day one of the G7 summit. Carney was with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy this morning and will provide $4.3 billion in new support for Ukraine's defense. The annual meetup in Alberta wraps up by the end of today, and more world leaders are joining to talk foreign policy. Out of the equation is U.S. President Donald Trump, who left ahead of schedule yesterday for urgent talks with his national security team about the escalation in the Middle East. Jason Gaidola joins us live in studio with the latest tonight. Jason?
Good evening, Maniso. While aboard Air Force One, U.S. President Trump says a new trading and security deal with Canada may or may not include Washington's new air defense system known as the Golden Dome, one that Trump is already putting a price tag on for Canada.
And we did everything I had to do on the G7. We had a good G7. We signed the deal with the European Union, phase one of a deal, but we signed the deal with the UK. And the UK is really great. We're very far down the line with a lot of deals.
As he boarded Air Force One in Calgary to shift his focus on the rising conflict between Israel and Iran, U.S. President Donald Trump appeared satisfied with his short visit in Kananaskis, Alberta.
We're making a lot of money. You know, we took in $88 billion in tariffs. Check the tariff column, and it's about $88 billion that they've never seen before, and that's nothing compared to what it's going to be.
Landing back in Washington, D.C. last night, Trump also boasted about his tariff policy once again, shortly after agreeing to a 30-day negotiating window on trade and security with Canada. Ontario Premier Doug Ford weighed in on the latest development.
It didn't seem like much happened, to be very frank. They agreed that over the next 30 days they'll put a deal together. That's good news. And then I guess President Trump had to take off back to the White House, but at least they had an opportunity to meet, and I'm confident that we'll get a deal done.
Although a new bilateral agreement may be separate from a potential deal with America's Golden Dome missile defense system, one that Trump says it will cost $71 billion to join, $10 billion more than what Trump previously demanded. The Prime Minister's office has yet to respond to Trump's latest claim. Meantime, Prime Minister Carney is welcoming new visitors on day 2 of the G7 summit and back to the meeting table to discuss foreign policy. One of the new additions was Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. This following a slew of Russian drone attacks in Ukraine's capital today. Ukrainian officials say at least 14 people were killed and more than 40 others are injured after Russia struck 27 different locations in Kyiv, leaving behind destruction to homes, schools, and critical infrastructure facilities.
It's a big tragedy for us, and we need support from our allies, and I'm here, and thank you for the military package. It's important for our soldiers to be strong at the battlefield.
Carney announced a $4.3 billion support package to Ukraine today, consisting of money, equipment, and sanctions against Russia.
The sanctioning of over 200 vessels in the shadow fleet that Russia is using, again, to try to evade these sanctions. That's the first thing. The second is we are providing additional military assistance, drones, helicopters, broader munitions, over $2 billion worth of assistance directly to Ukraine.
Carney's expenditure will count towards Canada's current NATO defense spending target.
I want to say that the fact that you decided to bring Canada to the 2% spending when it comes to NATO this year is really fantastic. And with Portugal having announced the 2% this year last week, that means that the whole of NATO will now be in 2025 at 2% before the summit starts next week in The Hague. So that is really great news.
NATO's Secretary General believes members will eventually have to boost its spending target to 5% of GDP in the near future, a demand that came from U.S. President Trump. Meanwhile, much of Europe have already imposed more sanctions against Moscow. When asked about it yesterday, Trump stopped short on the matter.
Why wait to say so?
Because I'm waiting to see whether or not a deal is signed.
Can you guarantee the UK won't be subject?
And don't forget, sanctions cost us a lot of money. When I sanction a country, that costs the U.S. a lot of money, a tremendous amount of money. It's not just let's sign a document. You're talking about billions and billions of dollars.
Later this afternoon, in front of media, Prime Minister Carney welcomed India Prime Minister Narendra Modi, a controversial invite that has sparked protests from Sikh activists in Calgary, and months after the RCMP accused Modi's government of having a role in murder, coercion, and extortion in Canada.